welcome to Crafts and Crime. I'm Amy.
I'm Elaine.
And today we are switching it up. Well, not really switching it up, but Elaine's going to do another craft and I'm going to do another crime.
Yay.
Yeah. It's been...
I'm also just like working through the same theme too, so it works out fine.
Yeah. And we didn't record on Friday because I threw out my back. I really messed up my back. And it was stupid. It was
I was literally like, why?
Yeah, me.
I was here.
Yeah, you were here helping me. Because I was like, I can't move. It was bad. I was just doing laundry. And it's that lift and twist.
It's the twist.
Yeah, I lifted and
always
twisted.
what it is.
Yeah, I have like a sectional. So I was leaning. I had like the ottoman in front of me. So I was going from left to right. 2 different kinds of laundry. Towel over here. Clothes over here, whatever. And I was folding and it just was like a lightning bolt up my back. It happened so fast. And so I was immobilized.
Yeah.
And I had to call you to text you.
tried.
Come and help. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you kept getting mad at me. Stop bending over.
Stop doing stuff.
I know.
I told you to text me to get the clothes from the washer and dryer, and
No, I
think
kids
you had Lincoln Lily
yeah,
do
I
it,
had
but
Lincoln.
I was like, oh, I was gonna.
Yeah.
I figured
No, it's fine.
we were
I
able
had
to
the
get
kids
something. Something. I was trying to say.
Yeah. And then what day was it that my mom came? Was it Thursday? Yeah, it was Thursday.
Yes.
Yeah. My mom came and helped a lot with Lincoln Lily's room and some laundry. Because, of course, it was like I threw out my back when I had 500 loads of laundry to do. It just piled up. And so she helped with that. And I'm still trying to catch up. And then, I didn't even tell you on Saturday. I hurt myself again on Saturday getting up too fast from the couch.
I was right there.
Yeah. You were like, is it your knees? And I'm like, no, it's my back.
All the dudes were chilling and partying, and we were like cuddled. Not together. On the big couch separately.
Yes.
Because I was tired and your back hurt, and we were just watching
I can't remember.
TV.
Oh, yeah, just TV.
Ghost stuff.
I think
Yeah,
it was.
ghost
stuff.
stuff.
Oh, yeah, it was.
We kept getting brought beef jerky. And because we were just hanging out like old biddies.
Yeah. And I can't remember why I got up really quick, but I got up.
Because you thought you were fine.
Oh, yeah, probably. But you were standing right there, and I got up and twisted.
And I saw it too.
Yeah.
Your poor, you just tremored and started to. Oh, goodness.
Oh, goodness. Bless you.
Thank you. Y'all heard it here.
But yeah, so I'm a hot mess. I'm currently sitting in my new computer chair
with lumbar support.
I know, I need the lumbar support. Yeah, I've hurt my back before. It's been a while. It's been when Avery was like a baby, I think I was telling you, and I lifted her out of the car seat and twisted.
It's ridiculous the amount of mothers I know who throw their back out just picking up a baby. And I did the same thing with my youngest, and actually our friend Randy hurt his back picking her up as well. One of the times we were all at the beach, and I was like, I can't carry her anymore, will you hold her? And he picked her up and he hurt himself too.
No.
Probably because he lifted and twisted.
Yeah.
It's like children.
It's so easy.
The back destroyers.
Me, I was just doing laundry. How
Yeah.
pathetic is that?
No, it's not.
I picked up a towel and twisted, and I'm like, eh.
Okay, well, maybe that's a little bit. I'm just kidding. It's the twist. It always is. And you probably just did it too fast or whatever.
And I think what it was is right the day before that, we were recording and editing, and we did a lot of recording that day.
Yeah.
And yeah, we did some Patreon stuff. And so I was sitting in that crappy chair. It is not comfortable. It's like basic. What would you even call that? Like a picnic chair?
Yeah, it's like one of those
cushion?
steel folded
Yeah,
chairs.
it's just a folding chair. And the reason why I was using that is because it's easy to like fold up and put away. Because it's like we record in my bedroom. And so, I need the room by my desk. So yeah, so I upgraded immediately. I was like, I'm getting a new chair. I bet you it was that. And then cleaning all morning. So I'm in my comfy chair. I'm getting used to it.
Yay.
It's like digging into my legs though a little bit on the sides. But
for anyone wondering, I sit 4 feet across on her bed.
Yeah.
All hunched over like Quasimodo.
But we're looking for like an on the bed support
really,
chair
I just
or something.
need to sit up straight and I will be fine.
Yeah, that's what I need to do too. But I'm getting distracted because this thing rocks a little bit, and so I forget, and now I'm freaking myself out.
I get it though.
Yeah, so we are recording. What is today? Monday. So we are just one day off, but that's okay. Life happens.
It does.
And yeah, so I had a relaxing weekend because I couldn't do anything. So I just laid on my couch.
Yeah. Yeah, my weekend was nice too because we all just chilled, except for when I was at your house.
But we just chilled.
Exactly.
We
So I literally just had to get up and walk next door to do the same thing I was doing.
You had to get off one couch to go to my couch.
Another.
So that's how we roll. Oh gosh.
That's how we lay.
Yeah. Literally. Okay, well, I guess we'll just hop right into your craft. Oh, let me fix my microphone. There we go. So, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Today I'm talking about blue.
Oh, yay. I had a feeling.
Yeah. Blue. So there's a lot of blues, honestly. So I'm just going to actually go over a handful of them. But again, as always, the source notes will have the other, the other ones that exist, the other versions that are mostly synthetic. But these are mostly our natural blues.
Okay.
So, of course, the Egyptians, they do it all.
I know.
In about 2200 BC, they made the first synthetic blue.
Oh.
Yeah, it was super cool. They would make glass, opaque glass with silica and minerals that had a lot of copper. So malachite and azurite and some lime and an alkali. Probably pee.
Ew. It's always pee.
And they would heat it up. They'd superheat it and turn it into these solid chunks of opaque blue glass. And then they would grind it up and add a thickening agent. And I like to think that it was probably honey because I really don't know what else it would have been then because it doesn't say. And then it made a really beautiful shade of blue. And I will have a picture of a vase that was painted this shade of blue.
Cool.
And it is very much of a mix between almost like an oxidized copper blue and like what we consider sky blue today.
Okay.
And so I'll have a picture of a piece of pottery that still exists with the blue on it. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. So now it's super quick. Moving on. It's crazy because there is a lot of color history. Good old Pliny the Elder. He talks about it too, which is that natural history book. It's like the everything Bible of natural history. And it's crazy because we just think about who thought to invent anything, and the thought of just like, oh, I'm gonna take these rocks and this and heat it up, and it made glass that was blue that we could paint stuff with. It's like science magic.
Kind of like a toddler. Like, what happens if I put all this together?
And it's usually it was probably something typical in the way of like, I bet you lightning struck something. You know what I mean? And I bet it changed its color, or it melted some silica sand with the rock. Yeah. You know, it's crazy. So we move on to our ultramarines. Ultramarine was named from ultramarinus, excuse me, which is meaning beyond the sea, because when it was brought over by Italian traders in their big boats, and they would come across. And so it was created around the 5th century, which would be the beginning of 400 to 500 BC by the Afghans in Afghanistan with lapis lazuli. They would take it, and it's the same. It really is so beautiful.
It really is.
And it's such a dark blue, and it sometimes has these like white, kind of greenish. I'll have a picture of that too. Okay. You can just Google it. And it was made the same way that the blue glass, the Egyptian blue, was made. So they crush these lapis lazuli, and it just, they wash it, and I'm thinking they literally hand pick out impurities, because as I looked around, again, there's not a ton. It's pretty tricky. We're talking 400 BC.
Yeah.
And so it was a process of crushing, washing, if like, I'm assuming like gold panning, just shaking and watching the pieces of crud, you know, like when you and I were busting open those geodes. There's pieces that aren't going to be worth anything in the eyes of they're making a pigment. A chunk of white quartz popping out is not going to be helpful. I'm thinking that's what they are meaning in the washing process.
Probably.
And so they continue crushing and washing, and just completely over and over and over, and it's mixed with a dry binder. Now, a dry binder is also something that's still used these days in making watercolors. I had to pause. I was like, watercolors? My brain was like, acrylic. Nope.
No.
And so that would be like a linseed oil, because it is a liquid, but it will dry down to a solid. So they used a dry binder, which could have been linseed. It could have also been maybe a fat. And when they take it and they would basically muddle it together, and so they're scrubbing it on a surface, likely a very smooth stone, and they're just buffing it and scrubbing and crushing, and then they made this pigment, and it was incredibly expensive and worth a ton of money. And the pigment ended up being worth its weight in gold, but even then, while it was still extremely beautiful, it was like a translucent type of pigment. It was never solid. So it had to be built up in layers as they used it, which made it even more expensive.
Okay.
And one of the things that ultramarine was used for as such a beautiful blue was it became synonymous with the kind of paint that was used in religious iconography. So the blue in the Virgin Mary's robe, those types of blue, it was always made as something extremely beautiful and special and angelic, and that color was used quite
It seems to be a
often
trend of like the more expensive it is, the more like sacred or
exactly.
like special it is. And
a good example, like Michelangelo could not afford it. It was too expensive. And I think we all know him so much that we think of, like, it didn't matter that he was famous and hired all over. He was poor all the way, forever. And so Michelangelo couldn't afford it, and the painter Raphael could only afford enough to use it as a very light wash over his colors. And so it could transform colors as well.
Okay, so you use it as like an enhancer.
Exactly. You could put it on a gray, put the blue on top, and it becomes blue. And therefore they would save money.
Yeah.
So the use of indigo, which most people are aware that it was a plant, it dates to around 4000 BC and comes from Huaca Prieta, which is contemporary Peru nowadays. Okay. And it was used, this was actually, you saw me on my phone, I was still piddling around here, so I'm going to read something that I had pulled up because I sort of forgot about it, and that bummed me out. It was, I'm just going to straight read this off super quick. I didn't want to leave it out on Wikipedia. I'm just going to go through here a little bit.
Sounds good.
It was cultivated. The original plant is called Indigofera tinctora, and the species came from East Asia, Egypt, India, Bangladesh, and Peru, the same type of plant. And it was used, Pliny the Elder mentions it in India as the source of the dye. That's where the name came from in, like, quote unquote later times, but it had been used obviously since 4000 BC, and that was the name it had been coined of. An interesting fact is that the color blue, as in the sky, was not a name. It wasn't a thing. People didn't look up at the sky and look at the blue sky. It just was.
Yeah.
So I'm reading this here, and the ancient Greek term for the dye, I cannot say that, meant Indian dye. And that is where that indicum or indico, which changed to indigo, came from. I don't actually have a name here for what it was called before.
Oh.
Exactly. Yeah. So we ended up we found a type of the same plant here that is called woad, WOAD, or Isatis tinctora, so very close to the original Indigofera tinctora, but it's more of a pastel, quote unquote. It's still very dark, but it's not a steadfast color. I'm gonna go back to my notes now. It's not a very steadfast color, and this color was the woad is what was used for royal blue, and so it was, extremely expensive, and again, it was made in the same way that a lot of our textile things have been made. They just pull off the largest first year leaves of the woad. They crush and macerate it with salt, and then actually the color that comes out is the same way as our purple. If you were listening, the purple, it oxidizes the same way as this color. It comes out as like a gray, a slimy, grody, ugly, sooty gray. And as it oxidizes with the air and soaking, it turns into this really beautiful blue.
That's so
But
crazy.
even with those mordants we talked about, the urine, the acidic, the lime, it is not steadfast, and it did not last. So not only was it expensive, but it was probably stinky, because I bet you they didn't wash it a lot.
Yeah.
And that's kind of grody.
At least it's not snails and pee.
Rotten fish stench. It's just maybe rotten celery, lettucey smell. In the 8th and 9th century, China started using cobalt, which is, most people know that blue. That is gorgeous. It was a super 90s trend for glassware in the kitchen, was cobalt.
Yeah.
And so cobalt was an oxide powder that, and for people that aren't aware, an oxide is a mineral that is mined from mountains, you know, and it comes out. And so this cobalt oxide, they learned by adding it to the white porcelain pottery that they were making before it was fired in kilns. They would use it with a paintbrush, maybe their fingers. It's just however the design was they were making. It was powdered on by hand. And then when it was heated in the kiln, it was actually an olive gray. Well, that's true. It was an olive green gray. So really dingy and grody. And as soon as it was super heated in their kilns, it turned into this gorgeous blue that we
so cool.
know as that blue, that beautiful willow blue pattern on.
That's
on
cool.
china
That's
ware.
like, it reminds me of just pottery. I'll see
It's
it
so
on TikTok all
magical.
the time, where it's like, that looks so dull. And then they fire it up in the kiln and take it out. I'm like, whoa, it's so bright
it
and vivid.
transforms. It's crazy. And
so
it's the same
cool.
thing. There are these oxide pigments because that's what happens. And again, it's such a strange thing because as we're going forward, synthetic cobalt was created in 1803. And what they did is they would superheat the cobalt oxide with aluminum oxide powders and to nearly 2200 degrees Fahrenheit or 1200 degrees Celsius. And they had to manage it. Again, I'm not sure how I can, I'll look around more and see if I can put it in. But from what I was reading, it's not like a recipe, you know.
Yeah.
But they managed to heat those powders up and it melts them without incinerating them. And in that process, they melt together and turn blue.
Wow.
Like, how do you figure that out?
I know.
Again, it's the same thing. You like make a mistake and put some stuff in the kiln on accident.
Yeah.
It's just magical.
Or kind of like I was saying earlier, like, I wonder what's going to happen. Let's try it out. It's
Why
just
not?
trial and error. Like, hey, let's
fuck around and find out.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just see what happens.
Yeah, because that's how, you know, it's like, it's not a mistake if you're getting somewhere, I guess.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And here's the next one. My next and my last, and then I'll have some fun facts. Prussian blue. If you watch Bob Ross, he talks about it still. Prussian blue to this day is still a pigment that is made.
Yep.
And Prussian blue is made from ferrocyanide salts.
Okay.
Yes, it is that kind of cyanide. And they oxidize the cyanide with iron. And in that process, it turns into this non-toxic pigment. And it was invented in Berlin around 1704, like 1710. It's kind of in between. And I truly, again, it does not say why. Why would you put that stuff together?
I know.
You're like, let's die.
Yeah.
And an interesting fun fact about Prussian blue: the pigment, for some reason, makes perfect carbon copies of drawings, and so architects use Prussian blue blueprints. So that back in the day, you know, you would be able to lay it down and like card scrub it like a swiper. You know?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a fun fact for Prussian blue, but I have a few little facts.
Okay.
Excuse me, after I burp. Blue was the last color to be coined as a color in the English language.
Oh, really?
Yes, is the very last
that kind of makes sense because you
one.
were like, there's no word for blue sky.
Right. They had to like come up with these colors. And in nature, a lot of colors don't exist in blue. If you notice, there's a lot, but nowadays, I'm sorry.
I'm like, in natural, like, you know, you go on a hike, you don't really see a lot of blue.
No,
but I'm
there's
like,
really
go in your
not.
backyard, you got all those pretty blue flowers.
And I found out the reason why most of our flowers that we have these days, like I'm growing bachelor buttons or cornflowers, but I think they call them bachelor buttons when they're the multiple colors and not like that cornflower blue we know is a Crayola crayon. And again, like I think they're called like blue-eyed babies or something. The other little blue ones I have, little tiny blue and white. Pretty much all of those have been genetically modified through selective plant breeding over these times to make them so blue. And we learned with plants like hydrangea, when you change the pH and the acidity. Back in the day when pennies were really made of copper, they would toss pennies, and that can turn your hydrangea, I believe it's from that pink to the blue.
What?
To the blue to purple. Yeah. So
yeah, we have
through
hydrangeas.
Yeah, they're so cute. I love them.
Yeah.
Through human intervention, we have made more blue things in existence because throughout history they weren't. It was very rare, and so blue was looked at to be one of the rarest colors as well, with purple, like I just like I just colored.
Yeah.
The idea of blue as a color for boys actually started after World War II. Manufacturers wanted to sell more clothing, so they started making much different colored clothing. Because, Victorian pictures, if you look, they have little baby boys in dresses and stuff, like, because they're not dresses, they're just dressing gowns, not having to move little britches off of diaper rags, and so that's when it really became popular. It was not until then, all just to make more money.
That's crazy.
By, like, boys wear blue and it's masculine, and girls wear pink and it's feminine.
Wasn't it originally the other way around?
I don't know. I do know that boys wore a lot of pink. I think that was what it was that it was very I would see blue would be super cute on little girls too.
I put Lily in blue all the time.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, I read that one off of here. And then my last fun fact. Prussian blue is actually used for specific kinds of radiation poisoning.
What?
And its side effects are only nausea and diarrhea.
That's crazy.
For some light cyanide poisoning to get rid of radiation.
That's crazy.
Ta-da!
That was so cool.
Well, I guess our intro was a little chit-chatty. I was really concerned that this was going to be super short. But then again, at the same time, I do kind of keep them short because I know it's not like the most riveting thing, but it is for, hobbyists like us, it is super interesting to find out.
Really?
And then, of course, like for anyone, like, I'm not going to get into the super deep dive nitty gritty of all of this stuff.
Yeah.
But my sources totally have it. And so if you are interested, it's all in there. You just click those links and there's lots more.
Yeah. I know. I liked it. I was riveted. I think it's fun because it's like I'm learning something. So I'm like, I only knew a little bit. I know. That's what's fun about this is I'm learning as I research and then as I'm listening to you. But I'm like, I didn't know that about the flowers and stuff because like in your backyard you have your whole flower bed.
Almost all of it's blue. And I was like, where the heck is the rest of the color? Yeah. And now it's like there's a million pink and red poppies now.
Yeah, that's what I was like. You have all those pretty poppies, and so you've got a lot of colors.
There was a lot of blue back there. It was like the first that showed up was blue.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, apparently
it's not
supernatural.
Oh, okay.
I'm guessing those colors were likely much more muted. I'm thinking all of those colors were like just like animals, the selective breeding, the way that they do it, they just find the bluest blue and keep cross-pollinating the bluest blue flowers, and they made gorgeous blue.
That's the same thing with I don't know how to say it correctly. Celadon quail. They're the ones that do the blue. Yeah. They're the ones that, and here I raise quail and I'm like, I don't know. But they lay the pretty blue eggs, and it's like selective breeding of you need a celadon male and female to continue that blue.
Or it'll just be like pale and almost white.
Or it'll just be like all the others brown.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so without the two, it won't be blue.
Yeah, I don't think so. That's what I'm starting to learn. And it's the same thing like with, rabbits. It's because Bo, he's all white. He's a Holland Lop, and he's all white and has blue eyes. And he has had multiple, he hasn't birthed the litters, but he has helped produce different litters. And none of them have blue eyes because that's a recessive gene, kind of like in humans.
Exactly.
So,
and the ladies are all dark-eyed.
I know. All the ladies are dark. And so he's the only white one we have. And I'm like, dang it, if only I could have another
one white. One more rabbit with blue eyes.
But Molly just had that litter, and one of them looks like it's going to be white. And I think it's Bo's baby.
Oh, sweet.
Well, I know it's Bo's baby.
Yeah. But you think it's going to look
I think it's going to look
Did you use
white
the book
enough.
I got you for
No, I haven't.
birthday?
I took it out. But then I put it in my phone. I have a problem with keeping track. But anyway, so, excuse me. Sorry. That was my microphone. Okay, well,
I'm waiting.
are you sure?
Yeah.
You have no choice. Okay, so once again, like I said, I'm covering a crime. It's not a continuation of what I did before.
Oh, okay.
But I was kind of surprised when I was researching this case that it does have something similar.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, and
murder. Sorry, it's not funny.
It's not funny, but that was a funny joke.
I should have saved that for Mommy's After Hours. Sorry,
No.
everybody.
I know
I do try to be really appropriate because it's not funny, but my
No,
brain was
it's
just like, well, I
not.
mean, murder's in common. But maybe
Yeah.
it's not. These aren't always going to be, by the way. It's just
No.
it just happens to be what we have been finding in our crimes tend to be that.
exactly.
But yeah, okay.
Eventually, we'll get
Okay,
to
I'm
like
sorry.
an
I'm
I
gonna breathe.
survived or something. So it won't always be murder. I have a couple I survived that I want to cover. So, yeah, that's a good show. But no, anyways, I am going to talk about Rachel Kosub.
Okay.
Okay, so this case starts in San Antonio, Texas on Monday, June 6th, 1983. So around 5:30 p.m., Rachel Kosub's daughter, Kirsten, starts calling her work because she hadn't come to pick her up from the babysitter's house.
Uh-oh.
And so she kept trying to call but didn't get a response. And so finally at about 9 p.m., Rachel's sisters drive to the design studio where Rachel works at to see if like they could see if she's there or, you know, if her car is still there or whatever. And they also call Rachel's employers, Dean and Sandra Murphy. They're the ones that own the business. And when they get there, they see that Rachel's car was in the parking lot and the front door of the studio was locked. So they call the police. When the police arrived, they entered the business with Rachel's sisters to see if they could find any trace of her. Which I'm like, why would you have the sisters come in? But I think they're just like, well, her car's here. Maybe she's sick or,
Maybe
you know,
she fell
something
down,
happened.
hurt herself. She's stuck in the bathroom.
Yeah. So one of the officers went like, you know, one way and another went the other way. And one of the officers noticed that her purse was still in her office.
Oh.
And unfortunately, the other officer and one of Rachel's sisters found Rachel.
Oh, no.
And immediately, San Antonio homicide was called.
Oh.
And they quickly arrived at the scene. Rachel was found face down at the bottom of the stairs in the main showroom, and a noose was made out of her own pantyhose and was tied around her neck. And it was clear that a sexual assault and strangulation had taken place. Her clothing was all torn up and her hands were behind her back, and there were papers strewn all over, and it was very clear that a violent struggle occurred. But the officers didn't find any sign of forced entry, and absolutely nothing was taken. So, so investigation starts. So Rachel, she was 32 years old, and she was a stay-at-home mom to her daughter, Kirsten, until she got the job at the studio. So, everyone at the studio loved her. Nobody knew who would do something like this to her. And her sisters were given the task of taking care of Kirsten, like right after her murder, because her Rachel's husband, Clifford, was in New York on a work trip. So he wasn't even home. And so they are trying to reach him that night to get a hold of him to tell him what happens at the hotel. And they're calling and calling and they can't get a hold of him.
What a horrific thing. I have to call you to tell you this.
Yeah, and you're in New York.
Because you can't just be like, hey, you really need to come home and I'll tell you what happens when you get here.
But they could not get in touch with him at all. And then the day after the murder, on June 7th, 1983, Clifford finally gets back to detectives and tells them, like, I'm coming home. Like, he knows what, he finally knows what happens. He's coming home.
What, did somebody leave him a message?
I think so.
Oh my God, that sucks.
So, of course, detectives want to talk to him. The husband usually is the first suspect, and vice
spouse.
versa.
Yeah.
You know, it's always the spouse or the, you know, not even the spouse. It could just be like
they
the
know them
boyfriend,
the
girlfriend.
best.
Yeah, exactly.
Who hates them right now or whatever.
So when he is questioned by detectives, he lets them know that like him and Rachel, like they had a fight in the morning before he left.
That's
but
sad.
like, you know, nothing out of ordinary for a married couple. We have a little disagreement, whatever. So detectives looked if like it was at all possible that he committed this, you know, crime, if he could have done it before leaving. But his alibi was airtight. He was in New York when the crime was committed.
Yeah.
So up until that point, detectives and even Rachel's family thought either he did it or had something to do with it. They were like, it's the husband.
Oh,
like,
no.
So her family. So that same day, just one day after her murder, coroner Susanna Dana conducts the autopsy on Rachel. There were clear, obvious signs of strangulation with the pantyhose. So like the petechiae and, the all in her face and eyes. Excuse me. The pantyhose was actually so tight around Rachel's neck that the coroner had a hard time cutting it off of her. That's how tight it was.
And they have those special safety scissors that have the rounded end so you can push and not cut the skin.
So she was clearly strangled. That was terrible. The cause of her death. There was evidence that her hands, so remember her hands were behind her back, but there was nothing on them. But at autopsy, there was like residue consistent with tape found.
So they took off the tape?
Yeah, that's weird. But yeah, so
maybe they thought about their fingerprints being left on the tape.
Maybe.
Because it's a smooth surface.
So yeah, no tape, but it was clear that she was obviously taped up.
Yeah.
And so the coroner said like the attacker was mostly like when she was face down on her back, strangling her from behind. It was confirmed that she was sexually assaulted and semen was collected from like both her vagina and her rectum and saved for testing. And actually in the notes it stated that there was an abundance, like a lot of semen. So it was like enough that we can test this, or whatever. And back then it was just blood typing, so you can get a blood type or whatever in the 80s.
Which is crazy. That is not that long ago. How different it is now.
Really
I think we say this every time. It's just like that was not that long ago.
No, it wasn't.
How far science has come. Okay,
yeah.
sorry.
So the both the semen and the pantyhose were stored for safekeeping testing, and based on rigor mortis, the time of her death was found to be between like 10 a.m. and noon. So there were really no leads. So detectives talked to the employees of the design studio, and an employee named Susan said that she had actually called the studio and talked to Rachel around 10 that morning. And she said that Rachel told her she wasn't alone, but there was a guy there and he was looking for, ceiling fans. And so Susan said Rachel asked her where the fan catalogs were, and Susan told her they're in the back room. And she asked Rachel, do you need any help at work, today? And Rachel told her like, no, it's fine. I'm fine. And so other than that, they know there was like a man that came. There's no other leads. Yeah. It could have just been, a shopper guy, whatever. So because there were no leads, soon the case began to go cold. But then 1 year after Rachel's murder, on Thursday, March 8th, 1984, just 19 miles away in Universal City, Texas, at 9 a.m., a rape occurred.
Oh, no.
The victim was Mary Jane Chisholm, I think is how you say her last name. And she survived the rape, so she didn't get murdered. But she told detectives that the man that attacked her did not want money, but she was convinced, like, he's going to kill me.
Oh, no.
And so Mary Jane worked as a secretary at an engineering placement center, and all of the work was done either over the phone or by mail. So it wasn't really a place where like customers come in or people were coming in and out. And so she said that
have like stranger encounters.
Yeah. You don't deal face to face with customers. And so she said that someone came in, and so she thought like maybe he's lost. So she said he was asking about a business, like if there was a business around there. So she tried to help him like find it. And then that's when he pulled a knife out.
Oh, no. And
she tried to fight him off, but said he was just too strong. And she also said that he just kept yelling at her and just kept saying like, I don't want money. Because she's like, take whatever money. And he's just like, I don't want money. Then he dragged her upstairs, threw her on the floor, and then tied up her hands and feet with tape.
The tape.
The entire time he just kept yelling at her. He then took her driver's license and showed it to her and said, like, I know where you live. If you tell anyone, I know where you live. Like, I'm going to come for you.
He must have a photographic memory.
So I think he took it with him.
Oh, I see.
He then assaulted her and then left. And she said that she was just too scared to move and like get up. And she's still tied up, taped up. And so she just laid there. And
you're like, are they going to come back? And then they're going to be mad I left.
Yeah. And so someone that worked in the complex finds her and calls police.
Oh.
And when police arrive, they inform Mary Jane there is a serial rapist on the loose, and she's not the only one this has happened to.
Oh, no.
At this time, there were multiple other assaults that had been happening in the Northeast area.
Mm-hmm.
So Live Oak detective Gary Hopper was on her case. And when interviewing her, she was actually able to give like a really good description of her attacker and was able to make a composite sketch. And so immediately Detective Hopper reached out to local news agencies and was able to get the composite sketch on the news that very night.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. And of course, many calls started coming in, just like, I think it's this person. I think it's that
I'm
person.
sorry. Do you know if they had told her like the other assaults also involved like the binding of the tape and stuff too?
I think it was just, I don't know if those others, it was just this was the case that was brought up in the show I watched. It was, she talked. Okay. And so I'm pretty sure the MO was the same with all the others.
Or they wouldn't have told her, I think. Okay.
But just the fact that there's a lot of sexual assaults happening, they're like telling her it's somebody's out there doing the same exact thing. So anyways, they get it on the news, calls start coming in. A lot of them are, just, okay, no, it's not this person or whatever. But one call came in that proved to be very helpful. It was a man who said his wife is certain she knows who the man is. Oh. And so they were like,
the composite.
Composite sketch. And so they were like, well, can we talk to her? And he was like, no, she doesn't want to talk. She doesn't want to have any part to do with this, but I will tell you everything that she told me. She just doesn't want to get in the middle of it. She's like, I can.
She's probably afraid of this
She's
person.
probably afraid, yeah.
Yeah. I was like, then why would you say anything? Okay,
exactly. She knows who she is or he is, and then bye, No, it's like, I will tell you she doesn't want to get involved. So he says that his wife works for a construction company, and the day she encountered this man, there was nobody else working there at the time but her. And she said that a man walked in and she was immediately scared by him. Like, immediately. You
know that feeling when you know.
You just trust your gut. Yeah, and she did. And so he had asked her if there were any jobs available and if the boss was there. And she was very smart to say, like, oh yeah, boss just left right around the corner to 7-Eleven to get us coffees. He should be back like any second.
Any second to help you out. Yeah.
And so then he was like, I don't have time to wait around, like, and just left. And she looked out and was actually able to get his license plate.
Nice.
And she wrote it down. And so detectives run the plate and find out that the car belongs to 35-year-old Mike Dossett. Mike was a carpenter living in Live Oak, and he umpired Little League in his spare time. So they go to his house, talk to him, and his wife answers the door. And they ask if he's home, and she's like, yeah. And they're like, well, we need to speak to him. And so when Mike comes to the front door, detectives are shocked to see Mike looks exactly like the composite sketch. Exactly.
Wow.
It was that accurate. Okay. And so they take him in, read him his rights, and then start interrogating him. Of course, he denies.
This is reasonable doubt, right? Or probable cause.
Probable cause. Yeah, okay. It's just like, you look like this person.
Too close to resemblance.
Yeah.
Like,
and
someone's like, how can you do that for someone? Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so they just bring him in. They're like, we need to talk to you. So he denies everything. He denies that he had anything to do with the rapes and said, no, he never went to any of the stores. He had no priors to show that he was a violent criminal or anything. But detectives knew one thing that really showed that he could be their guy. And the detective pulls out the composite sketch, hands it over to Mike, and says, who is this? And he looks at it, and he says,
this bitch, says my twin brother. Sorry.
No.
Sorry.
No, he looks at it, and he just says, that's me.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh. And then he admits to everything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They got lucky. He admits to everything. And then he says he wanted to get caught so he could stop. So
that's kind of sad too.
Yeah.
Like, it's gross, really gross and awful, but like sort of sad. Like,
but it was interesting that he's just like, all he needed to do was see the sketch and knew, like, I'm caught. Like, they know that's me.
Yeah.
I'm the prime suspect. They're gonna know it's me eventually. So he just says, like, it's me.
Yeah. Like, how can you, it's so strange. Like that, the mental illness that makes him so sick to do stuff like this. You're like, but I wanted to get caught. Why didn't you just
why didn't you just go and turn yourself in? Yeah. So he said there was like two different sides to him, and there's
that sounds like his twin.
Yeah, no, his evil twin.
Exactly,
yeah, and that's literally what he said. He has this evil part to him, and he just couldn't control it. And so then he's telling them like, yes, I committed these rapes or whatever. And then he starts talking about this horrible dream that he had. So this is where it's like the last two
again.
Yeah,
again.
I didn't plan this. I promise. I was
that's
like, what?
So crazy. Yeah, I had a dream I killed somebody.
Yeah,
or I assaulted somebody.
Pretty much what he says. So he says he's been having this horrible dream, and in this dream, he says that he's standing on the top of the stairs with a handrail around him.
Yeah,
and he is looking out, and there is a body laying at the bottom of the stairs, but he can't tell if she's dead or alive. So Detective Hopper starts to make the connection to Rachel's case. Originally, that wasn't a connection.
Right, because the others are just sexual assaults without the,
So Mike says that it was just a dream, and he never attacked anyone in that way. And this dream became known as the Bannister dream.
Okay.
So Detective Hopper called San Antonio detectives and made the drive all the way out to San Antonio to talk to them. And detectives talked to, so it was Detective Hopper that went out, and they showed him all the crime scene photos, and the dream matched up like with super great detail to the dream. Like the dream and the crime scene photos are like the same. And
so he's still like steadfastly standing by he didn't do it.
Yeah, he's saying I did not do that, but I've had this weird dream, and like, don't know why he would even talk about the dream. And so
because he wants to stop,
supposedly. I know, but still he's been stopped. He's
like admitting to something that will imprison him forever, because unfortunately we know sexual assaults do not land you in prison that long.
No,
not really.
No, not like murder. So Mike Dossett was then questioned about Rachel's rape and murder, and Detective Urbanek was the one to interrogate him, and he says that Mike said he would just rather talk to a doctor. Like he's like, I'm sick, I just need to talk to a doctor. But they just kept grilling him, and he just like would shut down and not confess to anything. And they asked if he knew that Rachel's daughter played t-ball in the league he umpired for. So her daughter Kirsten, so he has a connection to Rachel in that way. And he's like, no, I didn't know that. He denies he knew anything. He said he didn't know why he assaulted the other women, and just kept saying he didn't murder Rachel. He didn't do anything to her. So 8 months after his arrest, Mike Dossett was convicted of committing multiple rapes and was sentenced to 25 years. He served 8 years and 8 months in prison. And then
what did I just say?
And then he was on mandatory supervision for the remaining 16 years and 4 months. So he was out. But yeah. He was obviously divorced from his first wife.
Yeah.
And when he was released, he actually ended up remarrying.
Ew.
Yeah, to a woman named Linda. And on the show, it's the show Cold Blood. I don't know. I've been stuck on that lately. But she talks on there. Like, she's interviewed. Yeah. And so she says that when they went on their first date, he actually told her, like, I had been in prison and it was for assault. And she's like, assault? You mean like, does that mean like
beating
rape?
Up people?
Yeah,
or like
rape. And he was like, no, rape. And so he just tried to explain, like, I was depressed. I was in a bad place and da-da-da. And so there
are some things you can forgive in people, but come on now.
And so she, he was like, I just want to start a new life. And so she gave him a chance, and they got engaged after just like 5 or 6 months after their first date, and they got married. So at this point, like, all those other rape cases had been solved. It was him, but Rachel's rape and murder couldn't definitively be linked to Mike. Right. So
because the blood type, but that's it.
Yeah, but that's it. And so
that's like half and half the population, or like there's 3, right? A, B, and then like the weird in between 4.
O and O positive. Yeah.
But
so
still,
I know. And so
it was not enough.
No, and so it's like they can't just be like, oh, this person made a sketch of you, and your blood type matches. That's
and
not
you had a dream.
And you had a dream, exactly. So, but then think about the last couple cases where it's like a dream is all it takes, So they just didn't have enough to connect him. So Rachel's employers said that it was just too hard to like continue to work at the studio, and so they sold the business. And everyone still is, all this time after her death, people are still grieving her, and it's hard when it's like an unsolved case and you just don't know if the person's still out there. So in 1995, 12 years after Rachel's murder, her husband Clifford died. And it's sad because the daughter, was talking about some people, still believed he had something to do with it. And so he died. It's sad. So it was then that her daughter, Kirsten, I keep messing that up, called the police department to open the case again. So Detective Tim Britt looks at the case, except there was only one problem. Do you want to guess? He decides to look at the case, and they can't find it.
Oh my God.
It's gone. They can't find anything. And they have no idea where it is. So Detective Britt called Detective Hopper from Live Oak to see if he could tell him everything that he knew about this case. So Hopper tells him about the dream and tells him, like, I'm convinced Mike did it. And so Mike was then brought in again to be interrogated about Rachel's murder, and he denies everything. And then they say, well, at the time of Rachel's assault and murder, DNA wasn't a thing.
Right.
So then they start to tell him about, DNA is being used to help solve some crimes. And so Detective Britt got a DNA sample from Mike Dossett. However, they didn't know where the evidence was to test it. Again, like, they didn't have the rape kit, they didn't have the pantyhose, nothing. So Detective Britt was actually so frustrated and fed up with like the department, he decided to quit the police force.
Wow.
Yeah, but before he left, he decided to call Kirsten and tell her all he knows about Mike. So he told her about the dream. He told her, like, I think that's the guy who did it. So in 2002, 18 years after Rachel's murder, Kirsten emailed the cold case unit at San Antonio Police Department, and Detective George Sadler gets the email and decides, okay, I'm going to go find the case file. And he was shocked to see there wasn't one. And the only thing they really had was like a general report that just had like, it was like basic police reports and like times and dates and who was at the scene,
but
that
not
kind
the
of
bulk
thing.
of the
Nothing.
good, the part that's important.
No
is not
evidence, no crime scene photos, no interviews, no autopsy report, none of that.
You had one job, whoever works in the clerk's office.
And there was also nothing detailing Mike's dream. The only reason he knew that was because Rachel's daughter told him about it.
Does his wife work at the clerk's office?
I don't know. I know, that's usually a connection if someone's trying to hide it. I think this legitimately was just like bad.
A mess up.
It was just
like, it's done, it's not that, we're gonna move it aside.
Yeah. So and so he knew that they had Mike Dossett's DNA. And so he decides the only thing he can do is go to archives and look for the case. So this means he's digging through hundreds of unmarked boxes looking for anything pertaining to her case. So literally jumbled up boxes of like other case stuff, stuff that's just like, it's like not filed where it should be. So while doing this, he finds the autopsy report and the pantyhose.
Cool.
So he immediately called the lab to see if there was like any advancements in DNA technology that could help get like this, the skin cells, because DNA is still like, you need blood, you need semen, you need like, clear, but
and
it
there
wasn't
needs to be enough.
Yes,
to test.
That's another thing. And so it was like, if they could get anything off of the pantyhose that clearly he had his hands on, then like, can you? And so
typically, like, I'm thinking of if you're gonna do that, you're gonna pull and you're probably gonna keep wrapping and pulling.
Yeah, there's got to be a lot of skin cells or sweat or something on the
like
pantyhose.
If you're pulling, it's gonna strip it off your hands.
Yeah, so he's thinking skin cells. And so the lab's like, yeah, just send it over, we'll see what we can do.
I wonder if they like soak the whole thing. Like,
I don't know
so
no, I think they look under the microscope to see if they can find skin like
epithelium.
yeah, and I'm like, here I have a master's in forensics, and I'm like,
I got it for you.
let me
It's been a little bit
fresh. I know. I'm like, I'm really tired today.
Epithelial.
Yeah, so they're looking for anything on that, and unfortunately, the lab wasn't able to find anything on the pantyhose, and that's like really all he had, other than the autopsy report. So, because he found the autopsy report, he knew, unfortunately, well, fortunately, but also unfortunate for her, but there was plenty of sperm that was collected and saved. He just needed to find it.
Right.
And so he started looking everywhere that it possibly could have ended up, and it was thankfully found. It was in the back of a freezer at the Bexar County Medical Examiner's office, and it had been sitting there for 2 decades.
What?
And was so badly degraded.
Oh no!
There was like mold, fungus, bacteria present on the sample. Yeah, disgusting, but it could still be viable,
right?
Because all it does is degrade.
Yeah,
degrade it a bit, and so there's the hope that like, okay, we need to see if we can get anything off of this now, and so the lab runs a sample, and the report comes back to say there's no DNA found.
Oh no!
And so he's just like, "Are you serious?"
Ice crystals will explode cells.
Yeah.
Like that's the problem. It's the biggest issue with like tissue salvation in general is the frostbite. It is like the freezer burn. It will just like explode and destroy
2
everything.
decades. Oh, almost 2 decades. It's been sitting there and it's got mold and fungus on it. And so they're like, so he's just like, come on.
Yeah.
So he calls the lab and he's like, is there anything else we could do? There was plenty of it. Like, is there anything else we can do? So they're like, let's send it over to this other lab. They have newer technology and let's see if they can get anything. And so they send it over, and the DNA results came back. The DNA from the rape kit matched Mike Dossett.
Of course it did.
The DA was immediately called, and they got an arrest warrant. When detectives show up to arrest Mike, his wife was like in shock. She's like, she's convinced there's no way he could do murder, because they're like, he's being arrested for assault and murder. And so he completely denied that he had anything to do with Rachel's rape and murder. And they had to explain to him how DNA works and that they were certain that it was Mike because there's a 99.9% match to Mike.
That's crazy. But again, like people didn't understand. So you're like, it's yours. It's literally, we can tell.
There's no way.
Yeah.
So he was booked for rape and murder. And in 2005, his trial began. So the defense tried to say that because the evidence was old and degraded and, moldy or whatever, it could have resulted in a wrong match. No, it doesn't work that way. They got DNA from the sample. It didn't match to anybody else. There wasn't a 50% match or whatever. No, right. it was 90. It was him. So so prosecution had to explain it's not possible that it's a wrong match. It's his. So 2 of Mike Dossett's rape victims were put on the stand to testify that Dossett went to their work, but to help another, to help put him back in prison because he's out at this point,
And he's been out for a real long time, living his best remarried life.
And so 2 of his rape victims went up and testified that basically the MO was the same. They showed up at their work, pulled a knife, tied him up, raped, assaulted them, but they didn't obviously get killed like her. So it was like, what happened
That
there?
is really interesting.
So yeah, he went to their work in 1983 and 1984. So the 2 women. So it was same time. Prosecution then brings up the dream Mike talked about, and the defense tried to get this thrown out, but the judge declared that the dream would be admissible, so it was used. So the dream,
he talked about it a lot,
and it matched the crime scene in great detail. So it was clear that he committed the crime not only because of the dream, but because of the fact that his DNA was found inside of her. Yeah. So
he could have been like blacked out, like it's still there. You've got it there somewhere.
Maybe that's why he's having the dream. But he did it.
He may truly have not remembered. Mental illness does some strange things, but
he did it. Yeah. So prosecution explains what Michael Dossett did to Rachel that day. So Rachel had worked by herself that day. Dossett walked into the office. When she was talking to him, Susan called to see if Rachel needed help at work, and Rachel informed her she was fine.
It was the customer.
And that there was a man there asking about ceiling fans and asked where the catalogs were. Remember, Susan called at 10. Her time of death was put between 10 and 12.
Like right after they got off the phone. He probably realized, oh, I got to hurry up because she said.
So yeah, she said she's fine. She doesn't need help in that. And she asked where the ceiling fan catalog was. And, Susan told her they're in the back room, and they got off the phone. Mike had a bag that he carried with him and had a knife and tape inside. He then, as she was going to get the catalog for him, he pulled the knife on her. He tied her hands behind her back. He then sexually assaults her and then strangles her to death with a pantyhose and leaves, locking the door behind him. So in January 2005, Mike Dossett was found guilty and was sentenced to 40 years. So, I know, 40 years. Even after the DNA evidence showed that he committed the crime, Mike continues to maintain his innocence and say he had no idea how his DNA got there. He's on that show that I watched, that episode, and he is saying,
like,
I have
from
no
prison
idea.
Talking?
Yes, and he's saying, like, I have no idea how my DNA got there. So, like you said, I didn't even think about that. He literally could have blacked out.
He could have
done it.
And it doesn't make it okay, but like there is totally
and really
that
thought it was just a dream, but he really did it.
In like what do they call it? Like a fugue state where you like freak out and black out, because that's not always just for like dementia and Alzheimer's type of people.
So, and his wife still believes that he didn't commit the murder either.
So he assaulted her, but he didn't kill her. So one's okay, but the other
he doesn't.
is not.
I think he says he doesn't know how the semen got
right.
how his DNA got there, so he doesn't remember any of it. If that's really the case, but I'm like, why would you admit to all these other assaults and not this assault? Because this has murder, but you're going to.
Maybe because he really just does not. You'd be surprised, people who lie pathologically to themselves. You can convince yourself of what's true.
Yeah.
What's not true.
Yeah. Maybe he really was just like telling himself, I didn't do this.
My evil
and it's
twin
just a
did
dream.
it.
It's a dream. Yeah. My evil side. So, on August 23rd, 2006, Mike appealed his case, stating that the DNA was mishandled and went missing and then was found degraded, so it shouldn't have been used. He also stated that the dream shouldn't have been used for him in court. And of course, they found that there's no evidence that the DNA had been mishandled. It was just sitting in a freezer. And that the dream was told to detectives after he was read his rights, so it's admissible. He had a total of like 8 issues he brought up at appeals. And thankfully, his conviction was upheld. And so I haven't found anything after that 2006 appeal. And Mike Dossett is still behind bars. And Rachel's daughter said... at the trial that she was going to make sure that he served his entire sentence and couldn't appeal and get out. And he's still in prison as of today, and he's gonna die in prison.
Do you know what his age is about now?
I think I should have looked that up. Maybe in his 60s.
Yeah. So yeah, a long
he's
time.
older.
Like 40 years still isn't that much. Like how the hell does that even happen?
No, I know. I know the family, especially Rachel's daughter, is just obviously happy that justice is served, but I do get it when it just doesn't, and she even said that he deprived her of ever having a mother.
And then her dad passed away too, you said.
Yeah, so that was like 12 years after.
But to be
so young. She was like 20, and she's now fighting to get this case reopened. And I can't even imagine how I would react to finding out we can't find it. What do you mean you can't find it?
You can't find it.
Yeah, and I'm just glad that that detective put in the work and he was determined, like, I'm going to find it. I'm going to do the legwork. I'm going to figure it out. And so it definitely took 2 different teams of detectives to band together and solve it. But yeah, I think I kind of knew pretty quick. It's him.
Oh my
It's him. As soon as he confessed to those other rapes, and the detective was like, "It just sounds familiar."
Come on now.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I was like, a dream. What is with these men like just confessing through? It was a dream. Keep that dream to yourself. I'm glad they didn't. I'm glad they didn't. Well,
Right.
this one didn't.
It is so dumb.
But
you're literally just like, what is wrong with you?
I do. So like the last 2 episodes ago, when a dream was used against them, and it was completely false. It was, I think it was just you, and the dream came out after the initial interrogation. And so, you know, they have like it's fresh in your mind. So when you're going to bed, you're thinking about these things. So it's probably like, oh, like you guys put all this in my head and now I'm having this dream. This is different.
Exactly.
This is, I did it. Oh, and by the way, I'm having this weird dream, and then explains Rachel's basically crime scene in detail. Yeah, we're going to use that at court. You clearly described a crime scene. How would you know all of this? You know, he described her at the bottom of the staircase, hands behind her back, didn't know if she was dead or alive, and that's all he remembers. But they're like, really?
I'm sorry, did she actually fall down the stairs?
No, I think it was no, she
just
was
really looked like it.
Yeah. No, it was I think
her
it
placement
just occurred at the bottom of the stairs. Yeah, because he attacked her as she came in, so I don't think she had time to go upstairs. But yeah, so sorry to bring down the mood, but at least it's solved.
Yeah.
So I was a little worried that it was going to actually go unsolved. And
I still can't believe. Did that lady stay married to him?
Yeah. Yeah, she
the
was.
whole time, like he's in jail and she's like, I love him.
I don't know the date of the episode. Like
that's right. You said she was talking.
Yeah, she was talking. She was interviewed.
Positively about him.
Yeah. You know, and just saying she was shocked. She's never known a violent side of him.
Make better choices.
Yeah. And I'm sure he probably did want to change after that. And just put it behind him, which is like,
unfortunately, there are many serial killers that had happy marriages and happy children and were good parents. And they can compartmentalize that enough that she may truly only know a positive side of him.
Yeah.
But
because she met him after he served some time, and, you know, so I'm sure he's just like, I'm never doing that again. I just want to. And I'm sure he probably never did, you know, that we know of.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So she's, like I said, as far as I know, she's still married. She was talking. She still had his last name.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Richard Ramirez got married in prison.
Ugh.
So did Charles Manson. Ugh. I mean, or I don't think they would let Charles Manson get married. Maybe he did. I can't remember, but still, they're those dumb people too.
We'll get to it one day. Yeah. We'll figure it out. Yeah. Okay, so with that,
our faces
are like so bad. So, yeah, just stay crafty
and not crimey.
Bye.